Madam President, the stakes are too high to do anything else. Our nation faces not only a threat of default, but of a downgrade. The credit rating agencies like Standard & Poor's have made it clear that the United States needs to cut nearly $4 trillion over the next decade, or they will lose the confidence in our long-term ability to pay our bills. Yet, in my estimation, neither of the two plans, neither one, that are currently proposed by both the Republicans and Democrats and our leadership comes close to preventing our nation from being downgraded or actually solving the debt crisis we face. Each falls far short, whether it's in time or dollars. The truth is, both of the plans being discussed and that the Senate may consider, one offered by the leader of the Republican Party, Speaker John Boehner, and the other offered by the leader of our chamber here and my party, Senator Reid, do not really solve the nation's long-term fiscal problems as presented. Make no mistake, I have the utmost respect for both of these fine public servants. Both find themselves in difficult positions, and I know they are trying their best to do what is right. And I understand the desire to prevent our nation's default. But what we have before us are effectively a short-term fix and a shorter-term fix. Either one might prevent a default, which is a good thing, but neither may prevent a credit downgrade, which is a terrible thing. To me, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican proposal or a Democrat proposal, but including $1.2 trillion in savings from the wars that we should not be fighting, as savings just doesn't really make sense. Saying that we will save money that we haven't even budgeted or spent is like saying that because your family bought a $20,000 car instead of a $50,000 car, you saved $30,000. It's even worse when you consider we couldn't afford to buy any car in the first place. Most of the American people understand that, and I know in West Virginia they do. As for Speaker Boehner's plan, his was supposed to save $1.2 trillion, but the Congressional Budget Office took a look and determined it would save only $917 billion. So instead of fixing our problem, it kicks the can down the road to 2012, which will be an election year. And if you think this process is ugly now, you ain't seen anything yet. As these two proposals currently stand, I cannot in good conscience support either one of them unless they include a pathway for a long-term debt fix. While it is true that our nation will suffer if we only enact a short-term deal, we will suffer much more if we fail to fix our greatest fiscal problems. We must solve our nation's problems now, not in 2012 and certainly not in 2013. This is not just my opinion. As many rating agencies have warned and economists have predicted, every year that goes by, the options on how to fix our looming debt crisis will become worse and worse. If we are being honest, neither of these proposals, as they stand today, can prevent a credit rating agency's downgrade, an event that would be just as catastrophic or maybe even worse than default. Because I personally know a government's climb back from a low credit rating is extremely long and painful. To be clear, a downgrade in our credit worthiness could lead to sell-off of stocks, Treasury securities, and U.S. dollars. Gold prices could rise even higher, and interest rates could increase across the board, which would not only have a devastating impact on consumers, small businesses, and local governments, but would make the price of financing our nation's debt even more costly. At a minimum, the shock to our nation's confidence from our first ever downgrade could prove more costly than we can even fathom. Madam President, we can't let this happen. For our sake of our nation's future, we must come to a compromise that acknowledges that a long-term debt fix is needed and our spending is out of control, and that raising tax rates, whether it's the rich, the middle class, and most especially even the poor, won't cure our spending problems. But we must also come to a compromise that acknowledges that tax reform is not the same as raising taxes, and that there is something morally wrong when a large corporation like GE pays zero in federal taxes while small businesses or a middle-class family pays more. We must also come to a compromise that finally acknowledges that we simply can't fight 3 wars for years to come while we cut services here at home and we choose to keep taxes low. I've said this before. but it's so important. If I have to choose between rebuilding America and rebuilding Afghanistan, I choose America. So with the clock ticking toward default, what can we do? Madam President, as part of any deal to raise the debt ceiling, I would respectfully encourage leaders in the Senate and the House, our President, to find common ground by committing to a guaranteed vote on a long-term fix. Otherwise, as I said months ago, I simply cannot support a short-term deal that is just a little better than the shorter-term deal.